Here's a horse. Learn to commune with it. We will teach you the ways of the horse. Wow.
Look deeply into the horse's eyes.
See yourself reflected in its soul. Welcome to Noughty Kids, the podcast where we explore the best of that halcyon age when things were better, dungarees were worse, and the Spice Girls ruled with an iron fist.
And of course, iPads recorded what they were meant to record, not for the third time lucky, but for the first time. Anyway, it is of course the late 90s and early noughties.
Thank you for that confusing interlude. I'm Josh Hinton, 1994 to present.
And I'm Joey Hart, 1994 to be or not to be? That's the question. Anyway, this week we're going to take a walk down memory lane again and discussing school again.
Because last time there was so much to talk about around school that we didn't finish. Now, for those of you who are wondering what my colleague's bizarre outburst a second ago was, this is in fact the third attempt we have now made to record this particular episode of the podcast.
Am I meant to be recording now?
I will kill you. Don't make me drive there. I will defy government regulations and drive from London all the way up to where you are, and I will strangle you.
Stay safe. Stay at home. Protect the NHS.
Protect the Joey and his rubbish technology.
Thank you. No, I have been recording. It's fine. In fact, the first two times was also a joke. It wasn't.
Not very funny. Now,
not funny at all.
It's becoming
history
a tradition.
Projects.
No, it's becoming a tradition on this show to have a Foley noise before we begin. So let me see if I can get some coffee into this. Hang on, I've got a bit more coffee here. Do a lovely pour. Give us a sense of place and space.
Oh. Delicious hot morning coffee.
Mad berry. Very good.
Father.
Lovely. So that Foley worked quite well, I think.
That was great. Yeah, that was nice. I feel like I'm drinking hot coffee.
Good. Well, listeners, welcome to the sweet sound of Saturday morning with hot coffee and friends as we discuss the late 90s and early noughties. And yes, as you briefly attempted to say, this week we are going to kick off by talking about history projects because they are a joy, because they were fun, because they were a little island of light in the middle of the drudgery of maths problems. And
I like the maths problems, but we'll move on from that.
That's true. You did like the maths problems, didn't you?
We'll do a whole podcast just on maths problems. That'd be enjoyable.
Fun we'll have.
Oh, absolutely.
So go on. You've tried on multiple occasions now to tell us about your history projects. Tell us again. Go on.
It's all right. That's all in the past now. History projects were great. I loved history projects. I always went a bit overboard with a good history project and would make things for it just to demonstrate my superiority in the world of historyness. So we had the ones that stand out to me were we did one on a medieval castle where I made a scale model about 3 feet long, 2 feet wide of a medieval castle. And it was beautiful. It was Modrock. It was plaster of Paris. It was paint. It was scatter from my model railway to make it perfect.
You scattered trains all over it.
I scattered trains. And it would always have some sort of water feature because I had this tin of, or rather my father had this tin of water-based varnish, which was a revelation. No more the days of diluting things with turpentine substitute.
Oh, yes, we've all felt that pain.
Well, exactly. You could now create realistic water effects and then wash the brush afterwards, which was incredible. Anyway, so that was the medieval castle. I also did...
Oh, we do cover the issues, don't we?
We cover the hard-hitting issues of the day, such as children's history projects from the late 90s and early noughties. What was the next one? Yes.
Did you, by any chance, do a First World War trench diorama?
Do you know what? I did do a First World War.
I wonder how I know that.
That's incredible. Well, can you tell me more about this project that I did?
I believe it was a scale model and included cross sections and
it did
other things.
It was great. It was fantastic. It looked muddy because I'd varnished it with an excellent water-based varnish.
Tell us more about this water-based varnish. I want to know more.
Noughty Skids, brought to you by water-based varnish.
You've got to start somewhere, kids. Very good.
It was great, and it had an Airfix Sopwith Camel on a little wire, so that it looked like it was flying over the battlefield. And then it had all the little men that I'd painted, which were little soldier figures. And I'd built a little artillery gun in the background. And I'd planned it all out on paper. I've still got the drawings for it in the shed. I found them the other day.
That's all very exciting sounding.
In colour. For some reason, I drew the plans for it in colour.
Wow. You have
it's
a lot
all,
of spare
it's all
time.
I made this bit out of the lid of a pot, and then this bit is the top of a milk bottle, and then this is a bit of drinking straw with a bit of wood attached to it to make. And it was fantastic. It was all on a budget. It was all fun.
That's fantastic. That does sound
But
very good, in fairness.
that year was, I think, the third year of doing these projects, and I was not the only person to bring a realistic trench diorama.
Oh no!
Another student by the name of Jonathan brought one as well. His was 1 meter square, but
Wow.
for some reason he'd modelled the desert.
Was there
And so
any desert in the First
Not
World War?
that I'm aware of. Now I
There
might
was-
be wrong.
There was definitely a front in Mesopotamia, wasn't there?
I don't think that's what he was modelling, not by the type of sand he'd chosen.
I know Mesopotamian sand when I see it, and it wasn't that.
So he had his, but it didn't match, and mostly because my model was paired with an excellent thing. So we had to produce a paper-based booklet, and my paper-based booklet I'd modelled it after a model rail magazine. So I'd stolen all the formatting and colour types and font styles, and then adjusted it slightly for trench warfare. And mine was called, I think it was called Trench. No, it wasn't. It had a pun. The name of mine was a pun. It was called
Brilliant.
Over the Top.
Ah, very good. Very good. I can see how pleased you are with yourself. Listeners, you can't see his
was so
face,
pleased.
but he's very pleased with himself.
Imagine smugness mixed with complete happiness.
Smappiness.
And it was fantastic because not only that, but it came with an interactive CD-ROM.
Oh, yes, the interactive CD-ROM that our non-existent First Take listeners have already heard about. Do tell us about
the
interactive CD-ROM that you managed to create
interactive-
in the late 90s and or early noughties.
So in the late 90s and early noughties, as our listeners who were around in the late 90s and early noughties will remember, computing power was limited. And what you
They
could
were dark
actually
days.
achieve on virtually nothing apart from Microsoft Word was limited. But for those magicians who knew the arcane rites involved in operating PowerPoint, there was much fun to be had, and you could set up animations. No great surprise to anyone. I mean, children from the late 90s and early noughties will of course remember many PowerPoints at school with that kind of car crash sound effect and things zipping from side to side.
Oh yes, that I do remember.
Um,
And you
but-
I just remember you could do the thing, couldn't you? Where once you'd put a thing on the PowerPoint, you could draw a track for it to follow. And so the number of times the PowerPoint would start with it saying like, "What I did on my holidays," and then it would go all over the
just
screen,
wiggle around at
No
speed.
reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Wherever
Exactly, PowerPoint
did
back then was fun.
transitions in PowerPoints go? I feel like we all became adults and said no, PowerPoints shouldn't do that anymore. But that was the best bit
It's-
about PowerPoints, wasn't it?
Exactly. It's a sad time that we live in now. But let us return.
You made the most of it for your history project. You said
I
there
did.
should be transitions galore.
There shall be, but not only this, it wasn't a traditional PowerPoint where you went from one slide to the next in a linear fashion. No.
No.
No, sir. No, sir. It had buttons. You could put buttons in on Microsoft, which would take you from one particular slide to another particular slide, because at this point, PowerPoint
Future.
was not just for producing terribly boring PowerPoint presentations. It also was for making many other things. And so there was all these kind of business settings in PowerPoint that normal people didn't really ever use, but you could. And so you could choose to have menus. So I made a slide which was a menu kind of content slide, and you clicked it and a sound happened and an animation happened, and then it took you to the right page of information.
I do
And there
remember
was
that being a thing, yeah, that nobody used, like you say. But is that why it was called PowerPoint? Is that why it's not called slideshow? Is it was because it had all this stuff like
I assume so.
power, like I
Getting
don't
straight
know,
to the point.
automation related power, because there's an automation program called Power BI. This is terribly boring, but yes, very interesting. And so you created it, and your teacher looked at you and said, "Why didn't you go outside and play with your friends?"
The teacher was the least impressed person in the room because he put it up on the screen because I was like, sir, I have this disc.
And he
this interactive DVD.
Internally, he died.
And he fired up the overhead projector, which was brand new because you could actually you could now put the computer screen on the wall. This was
man, those were the days, weren't
they? Those, it wasn't just acetate anymore. And I was very disappointed because he loaded it up and immediately just scrolled through it with the scrolling wheel on his mouse and completely negated all of the animation and buttons. And I was like, no! Look, there's clearly a loading screen saying loading. Just watch it.
Don't skip past it just because you can.
Honestly, because you can't lock out the scrolly wheel. It's not one of the options.
That has reminded me of my teacher in year 6 was. I mean, we used to joke that he was actually going to marry his smartboard. He was so excited about getting a smartboard when they were new, and I just remember he used to. Did you have carpet time at primary school where you would leave your seats?
For the little bit of primary school that I was in state, yes.
Right,
yes,
yeah.
we did.
And I hated it because you just sit there for an hour and listen to the teacher talk, and you weren't allowed to do anything. You had to sit there quietly, and it was boring. And when we got the smartboard, it got like 10 times longer because he just loved the smartboard and he just wanted to sit there pressing buttons on it and watching things happen. And do you remember how it had the pens that you could inverted commas?
Oh yeah, they're terrible. They made a horrible clack as they hit the board
and were so inaccurate. Like they were utterly impossible to use. And so he'd be sitting there trying to do the lesson notes on the board, and it would just.
And there was like 3 different colours and a wiper one.
That's right.
And they were all, and the dot was always 6 inches away from where the pen was.
Exactly.
They had never calibrated it properly.
Never.
And nobody ever tried to recalibrate it. They just operated it with this handicap. And they were like, okay, I'll just have to live my life 6 inches to the right of where I want to be.
And some people, in fairness, over time, I do remember at secondary school, some people could.
They got the hang of it. They didn't bother recalibrating. They just did it.
They must have had to visualise in their minds what they were writing and know that somewhere to their left it was appearing on the board. But they were just there scribbling away on nothing. Oh, it was so stupid. But
it was. I have one memory from carpet time, which was to sit cross-legged, to extract a single fibre from the cuff of my jumper, wrap it around 2 fingers like a mini garrote, and then slowly cheese wire corners off my shoes.
Yes.
You would slowly saw the corner off the sole of your shoe.
Absolutely. Or you just wrap the thread around your fingers until they went purple.
Yeah.
Sit there and see how long you can keep it there for. And then you take it off and your fingers will be all ridged. Stupid things that kids do.
Did you do history during carpet time? Let's try and bring it back to topic.
History projects. I've sort of run out of history project stories. I don't remember that many.
Did you never go overboard with your history project?
No, not really. No, we didn't really get given. Oh, it's not really a history project, but it is an interesting sort of sign of how society has potentially moved on since the late 90s and or early noughties, which I do remember in primary school, pretty early on, I think, like year 1 or year 2, doing African masks.
Oh, right, yeah.
Making African masks out of cardboard, which was probably fairly racially insensitive.
Yes, because Africa, that singular place where that shares one culture.
That's right, and we learned nothing about, such masks as are created in Africa. We learned nothing about who makes them or why they make them or what the culture behind them is. It was just they have masks in Africa and we're going to make some.
Yes, and Aboriginal art we did as well, which was art, but you could only use dots.
Oh yes, we did that. Did you papier-mâché a plate and then paint on it?
We had pieces of wood already cut out in boomerang shapes, and then we painted on them. But drops of paint, because that's all we could. That's all the Aborigines, of course, could do. So that's all we could.
Yes, that's right.
It was so narrow.
I remember having to ask Mum for a plate that she didn't want to see ever again because I had to cover it in papier-mâché and leave it covered in papier-mâché.
Oh, you didn't unpeel from the plate later.
Nope. So I mean, it's probably gone in the bin now. But for many years in my house, there was this, plate wrapped in stuff and with a salamander painted on it, sitting in one side of the room. And then once you got to secondary school, all you did in history was one word. Let's see if it was the same for you.
I don't know.
Clearly it wasn't. Hitler.
No.
Hitler.
We never did Hitler because I didn't do GCSE history.
Oh, really?
and
Okay.
and Hitler was, he's prime time history.
What
So
did you do?
only
Tudor, what was it called? Enclosure laws and that.
we did the 1960s.
What?
So we got to listen to 1960s music,
That
and we
sounds
learned
really fun.
about. It was really fun, and we learned a bit about the Cold War. But I seem to remember we didn't do that for very long, and I can't remember why. We had a great summer school actually, which we did in the summer holidays, which was all about the 60s, and we got to go to all the. We went on a trip to Liverpool, and we went to
Nice.
all the different pubs that the Beatles played in.
That's really cool.
Like the first one, I don't know, it was Cavern Club or whatever it was called.
Yeah, Cavern Club, yeah.
And we went to their museum on the side of the Mersey, and we did all of that kind of Beatlesy things, whilst dressed in 1960s dress.
How does that work? What is 1960s dress for?
I don't know,
primary
stripy
school
top and
kids?
a stripy top and a string of onions around your neck, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That sounds about right. Which was great. We loved it, and we also recorded a single.
What? Amazing.
So we formed bands. We learnt instruments. I mean, I could just about play the drums at this point, which wowed everybody because they were going to learn to play the drums, and I'd played it before.
Amazing.
Not a lot. No, not had lessons at this point, but I played the drums, and we formed these little bands. There's about 20 kids, and we had bands of about 5 people, and one person learnt to sing, one person played the guitar, one person played the bass, one person on the drums, and one person on the keyboard, kind of thing. And they learnt just enough chords or just enough notes, and we wrote a song.
That is amazing. How long was
And
this project?
I had it on CD. Well, this was a summer school, so we
I
were.
see.
It was in the holidays for the really cool kids who wanted to carry on learning.
I wasn't going to probe you about why you were at summer school because it doesn't sound like a very common thing to do. But I thought maybe it's just private school. Maybe you have to.
This wasn't private school. This was at state.
Goodness me.
For the couple of years that I was there in the late noughties. It was great. It was a really good summer school. And they had record players, and they played us loads of records, and we analysed the lyrics so we could write our own 1960s style lyrics.
Amazing. That's
It
so
was
cool.
brilliant. It was really cool.
Oh, I'm very jealous. I've never really previously sort of felt like there was all that much credence to the whole, vast chasm between the experiences of. Although you did just say that was state school, but between the experiences of state school and private school pupils. But hearing your experiences compared to mine, which were mine were basically like we were sort of given some paper and pens and told, don't spike yourself in the eye, and yours were like, here's a horse, learn to commune with it. We will teach you the ways of the horse. Wow.
Look deeply into the horse's eyes.
See yourself reflected in its soul.
Form a bond. Become one with the horse.
Break time, games, and how time was spent at lunchtime.
That's break time, games, and how time was spent at lunchtime.
The mystery voice for listeners at home.
The mystery voice. That's break time. That's more, the mystery voice is a bit more whispery. He's like really close to the microphone. That's break time, games, and how time was spent at lunchtime. The mystery voice.
The mystery voice. Yes.
Which some of our listeners will get. That is a reference to
names and addresses on a postcard, please, with responses to what that was. This was a very important part of life, wasn't it? This was really, particularly at primary school, this was the extent of your social life, wasn't it, really? I mean, I suppose not entirely. I suppose during the summer, there was playing out. But
I mean, you say social life. I say by myself in the design and technology department building a trebuchet.
Yes, I probably should have just done that. I probably should have just said, you know what, sod it, I'm going to go build a trebuchet. That sounds like a very good idea. But
I did the classic school thing, and I watch this now as a teacher and lament over how boring it is. But children, and we did this, children do just stand around at break time.
Or run around, more accurately.
Or run around a bit. Well, no, not even. I don't see a great deal of running around anymore.
Really?
But they just stand around in groups looking miserable.
Well, hang on. You're teaching secondary school, aren't you?
I'm teaching secondary school, but
yes.
it's the same. Yeah. So
primary school was the running around, wasn't it?
There's a lot of running around.
That was what I hated. Because secondary school was all right. Because once you go to secondary school, yes, you could just stand and be miserable, which I was, and I wanted to, so I did.
I didn't subscribe to standing and being miserable. But you're right. The smaller you are, the more you run around.
And
Did you?
the whole
I dug
it's like a caste system, don't you think, at primary school? It's like a caste system where the faster you can run, the closer you are to God, and the slower you are, the more of an untouchable you are. And if you are very slow, then you might as well go and clean the toilets, because that's how much social value you have. And I was very slow at running, and so my entire existence was plagued by this inability to catch other people when they decided to move quickly.
Yes.
And you look back at it and you think it's such a bizarre scenario, really, isn't it? But that was the case. It was just that was that. If you couldn't run quickly,
all games involved running. Football involved running. Tag involved running. Well, we called it Tig. Tig involved running. Bulldog involved running. All of the games involved running.
Blocky was the worst. Do you ever play Blocky?
I think it's the same as Bulldog.
It was like hide and seek, but with running, because it had to have running because it was kids. And you would play hide and seek, and if the person caught you, instead of saying "I've caught you" and you going "go" and just that's the end of it, you then had to catch them before they managed to get back to the base. And if they got back to the base first, then you were on next time.
Oh yes, no,
and
we did play Blocky. Yes,
you were then condemned to run after everyone for the rest of eternity because they were all faster than you.
I know, and awful. Should you go, this is silly, I'm not going to play this anymore, you were viewed as a heathen.
Yes, outcast.
And an outsider. Exactly. You must run, and we will laugh at you.
Yes, an apostate and a dangerous influence on the status quo, yeah.
Absolutely.
But I can't remember one other thing that was really fun at primary school, apart from the running around, which was abysmal, which was when we were allowed on the field, when they had cut the grass, and there was a lot of dry grass lying around because for some reason their lawnmowers didn't pick it up. They just left it on the field. We'd spend ages making mazes and building like dens and forts and stuff out of the grass. It was brilliant. You pile it all up and turn it into like, you could make things out of it because it would all just sort of stack up together. So we'd make mazes, particularly. I remember we did a lot of that, and it would only last for a couple of days, obviously. But it was brilliant. It was such fun.
I don't think I ever did that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, they don't have grass in the DT room. That's probably why.
No, probably not. No, but I built many things in the DT room because the DT teacher was also my form tutor, which I think helped. So he was aware of just how fantastic (brackets weird) I was, and so he would let me just work in the workshop, and his office was off to the side of the workshop, so he just stayed in his office. And I had the whole workshop to myself. And I built things. It was great. I built model railway engines. I built a Robot Wars robot.
Oh wow!
It's quite small, based on a radio controlled car and some vacuum forming and some bits that I'd made, and it zoomed around the floor, and it was great fun.
How was it? How was it armed? Was it armed with something?
No, I never got round to the actual arming of it because I ran out of electronics at that point. You see, the radio controlled car would move it around the floor, but it offered nothing else.
Yes, you do need.
So it was a wedge shaped robot. Again, I've got all the drawings right in the book.
So one day you can recreate it.
So one day I can recreate it.
Yeah,
and it was great. But yeah, I built a trebuchet. That was the best one.
That's very impressive. How big?
It was made of all the offcuts in the scrap box. And it was about 1 metre long, maybe a bit less. And it could lob things about 20 metres.
That's very impressive. 20 metres, that's a long way.
Yeah, and I realise now that there's probably some health and safety issues with children creating siege weapons.
Not back then, there wasn't.
But it was great because I tested it indoors and went, this is great. It'll go from one side of the classroom to the other. So I just took it outside and I walked around the school trying to find nice spots. Picked up a bunch of stones and was happily flinging stones around the school using a miniature trebuchet. And then I carried it back to the DT department, put it back on my little bit of a shelf that I could store all my bits and bobs.
That's very good.
And that was that. And at no point did any teacher come to me and go, why are you flying rocks around the school using a catapult, a small trebuchet?
That has reminded me of a good story. So, talking of rocks and throwing things around, I remember one of the very few places that was indoors that we could get to in primary school that we could shelter in if it was raining and cold. You know how it had to be really absolutely thunderously hammering it down for them to do wet play and put you inside and give you colouring books and that.
There had to be a severe weather warning.
They did, yeah. There had to be a danger of actual death by hypothermia,
or drowning.
Go on, out you go, splash.
It was. Okay. I remember in primary school coming back in and like putting my jumper and my socks on the radiator next to me in the classroom to dry them off because we'd got that wet.
Yeah, that's right. It was so inhumane. But anyway, one of the places you could hide in our school was there was a cloakroom that had a door that communicated directly with the playground. So if there wasn't a teacher in, and it was like slightly round the side, so the dinner ladies couldn't really see. So you could go if you got round there. You could go into
without
the
being
cloakroom,
spotted.
And there was no teachers in the cloakroom, and so we spent quite a lot of time in there. And I remember once I had a rock that I picked up in the playground for whatever reason, and in the sort of thoughtful, investigatory way that small children do, investigating the world around them, and you know, I just started sort of hitting things with it, not like really hard, but just sort of bashing it against things.
Clang, bang, clack.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. And one of the things I did was I bashed it against, there was like, the cloak hook racks.
Yes. The kind of old, are we talking kind of old, wrought iron?
No, it was like a wooden plank stuck to the wall with hooks coming out of it. And I bashed it against the wood.
Sorry.
Right? Bashed it against the wood, made a small dent, as you would in a piece of wood with a rock. Not a big deal.
Of course.
And for the life of me, I cannot remember how this teacher ended up finding out. But one of our teachers came. Actually, it was the same teacher who couldn't do maths. She came in and found us and was.
She didn't put two and two together.
She did this time.
She did.
She was angry with us for being inside because that was like against the rules of fair play.
You couldn't have counted on that.
But then somebody told her, or she noticed, or whatever, that I'd made a small dent in the wood with this.
It all added together.
Rock. And oh my gosh, she went bananas. She shouted at me for a good 5 minutes about vandalism and destroying school property and such. And then she made me stay in for the rest of that playtime and write a letter of apology for putting a tiny little dent. I mean, a tiny little dent to the headmistress.
And did you link your actions to your consequence? Did you understand?
Well, this was the funny thing because the consequence was a bit of an anticlimax because she made me write this letter to the headmistress, and the headmistress.
And from that spawned a love of writing and literacy.
I thought you were going to say from that spawned a love. That I was like, no, no love between me and the headmistress. She was terrified.
Dearest Margaret, I'm writing to you on a matter most close to my heart. For a long time, I've been putting notches in bits of wood in the hope that you'll notice my amazing artistry. Why won't you look at me?
What Cupid is this that has found my lumps in the wood and sent me to thee? No, she was an absolute battle axe. She was the second battle axe I've described on this podcast. She was terrifying. She had a beard. Like she was.
Wow. Okay. Was she a woman?
She was, just about. I mean, she wasn't the kind of head teacher who was like friends with all the children. You know, she didn't sort of come round and say, "Hello, children, how's your Montessori lesson going?" She was like, "Oi!" You know, she was one great big walking "Oi!" And
yes, you could hear dun 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 as she walked down the corridor.
That's right, Flight of the Valkyries.
Yeah.
And so being sent to her was terrifying. It really was Trunchbull territory. So I was there, shaking like a leaf with my piece of paper, flappity, flappity, flap, because I was a good boy, I didn't get sent to the head teacher.
Well, exactly, yeah.
And I went up to her and was like, and she looked at me and was like, "What? Why are you here?" And I went, "Oh, but it's a dent in the wood, and I'm sorry," and gave her the piece of paper. And I just remember looking at me and being like, "Right, go away."
It's like just going home that evening going, "Why do I do this?"
Yes, exactly. Children are apologising to me for dents in wood, and that was it. But it was one of the closest times I ever came to. Oh, and the other one. Sorry, I know I'm going two in a row here, but I'm going to do it because it's a good segue.
Go for it.
The only other time I got sent to her in my 7 years of primary school, Pokemon cards. Remember Pokemon cards?
I do remember Pokemon cards.
More valuable than gold.
than gold itself.
And I had as everyone did, I had a big stack of them with a rubber band around it.
Did you have Charizard? That's the main question.
Charizard certainly passed through my hands. I remember at one point too rashly trading the Charizard for something else.
And realising the error of your ways.
And regretting it afterwards, yeah. But anyway, I had the other thing I used to do. Did you used to do, I don't know if you guys had them, but with any kind of trading card thing, did you ever used to do the thing where you'd say, swap collections and we'll go through and I'll pick out the ones that I want and we can talk about trades?
Oh, no.
So we used, it was quite a common thing, you'd give them your collection, they give you theirs, and you would go through and you'd say, I want
wow,
this,
that's a lot of trust.
Well, exactly, yeah. And that was exactly the thing. You used to just put a couple in your pocket as you were going through. You'd be like, "Oh, he's got two. He's got two of them. He won't notice if I take one."
Fantastic.
So, anyway,
and of course he would have noticed because everyone knew exactly what they had in that deck of cards.
Absolutely. I also remember the smell of the football stickers. They were the other ones, the Pagani, whatever they were, Panini.
Panini football stickers.
Panini football stickers, yeah. And
we never had those.
They had a really particular smell, the glue, I presume, that was in them. They smelt really sort of...
Slightly carcinogenic.
Yeah, exactly. You could feel your lifespan decreasing.
A concerning but interesting smell.
Exactly. That's a very good way of putting it, yes. And anyway, the point of this story was, I had my pack of them, and I was talking to somebody about them, and they slipped out of my hands on the playground. And so there was this big, swoosh, they all fell on the floor, and they all spread around. And
get him, go, get him, go, get him.
It's like you were there, honestly. It's like I'm getting flashbacks. You were there, man. And yeah, so everyone started sort of joke scrabbling around, but sort of scrabbling to pick up my cards and nick them. And I was in the middle of this circle of jeering people, and I was, bright red and just, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing, and my cards are so precious, and trying to gather them up.
It's the worst thing that could ever happen to me.
Exactly. And I remember one boy called Craig was behind me, laughing and trying to pick up my cards. And in a moment of pique, a moment of madness, I kicked out backwards like a horse.
Oh my goodness!
And absolutely smashed him in the face with my foot, square on.
Good
absolutely,
gravy!
Bam! Right in his nose. And so we were hauled up in front of the head teacher, and I was. Oh man, I was disconsolate. I was.
She was like, "It's you, that stone boy."
Are you bound? And well, I don't know. I just embarked on that quote and then failed to remember the rest of it. Anyway, yes, and I was utterly disconsolate because I was in trouble and I didn't like being in trouble. I was weeping, and he was all right. He was okay. He wasn't really crying, but I was in bits. So yeah, those are my two playground related incidents.
We never had football cards, but we had James Bond cards for some reason. Got very popular.
Where did you get them from the newsagent?
There must have been. Well, with all of these cards, I never bought any myself, and yet I somehow managed to amass collections and then lose collections. You got them, and then they all disappeared again.
Yeah.
And you were just a custodian of these precious items.
It was good trading for being, on the London Stock Exchange if you happened to get there.
Yeah. I do, but in terms of dropping everything and then not being able to find it on the playground, the only thing I ever dropped on the playground and wasn't able to find was one of my own teeth.
Oh.
Because in primary school, obviously your teeth. You're getting your adult teeth. So I had a wobbly tooth, and right near the end of break, it came out. But it fell on the floor, and I couldn't find it, and I was mortified because I knew if I'd gone home, I would not get that little 20 or 50 pence wrapped up in a piece of toilet roll.
That's exactly how my tooth fairy did it as well.
But the amazing thing with my tooth fairy was I always used to wrap up my tooth in toilet roll, neatly, in a square, and wrap it in sellotape because that's what I had in my room. And then it would always arrive as money wrapped in masking tape. And this always confused me because I thought, but my dad's the only person who has masking tape.
Oh, Nancy Drew.
How is it that these tooth fairies well, I mean, I realise now, of course, with the maturity that age brings, that the tooth fairies, of course, were actually just being very, environment conscious.
That's right, yes.
They wanted to reduce the number of single-use plastics.
Yeah, you can, of course, buy masking tape in Fairyland.
No, exactly. A masking tape is paper-based rather than plastic-based, and therefore is biodegradable, which is a good thing.
Yes.
But you only realise these things as adults.
Yes. Yes,
as a child, it just used to bemuse me. I think this brings us on to discipline. I think we've talked about discipline a bit here.
Discipline.
Now, I, as we've discussed, went to a proper school. A private school. But before that, I went to the local comprehensive, which was in Richmond.
St. Murderson Towers.
It was fantastic, and I was there, reception, year 1, year 2. During this time, side note, I was the star in the school production of The Rainbow Fish.
Oh, what?
Do you know the book, The Rainbow Fish?
Oh, yes, no, I do remember that. Yes. I was
Give
expecting
away
you to
my
say...
scales, my beautiful shiny scales.
You played,
and I was the
played
Rainbow
Alan
Fish.
Bennett, did you, in the play?
This beautiful shiny
rainbow
scales.
fish.
I was there trying to give my scales away. Mother didn't agree. Father had built me a fin for my back, held on with a leather belt.
Top work.
The other children were jealous, but I believe that was the moral of the story.
Very good. Okay, yeah, so you were presumably the fish.
We have it on video. It's fantastic.
Oh,
We've watched it many times.
Did your parents have to make you a rainbow fish costume?
They made me a rainbow fish costume. It was a T-shirt, which had Velcro patches, I think, on it, so that I could put my scale, because you have to give away my shiny scales,
right.
My beautiful shiny scales, as you go along.
Mutilate yourself, rip parts of your body off, and give them.
It was great. I seem to remember it just involved a lot of walking up and down the front of the school hall, as I swam, and I would encounter other fish and have interactions with them. Initially bad, and then by the end excellent. It's an interesting moral, because I think the idea is it's about sharing.
Right, sharing parts of your body.
Sharing parts of your body. Mutilation, I think, is one of the main themes of the storyline.
Encouraging children to cut off their favourite body parts and give them to others. Yeah,
exactly. Other fish being utterly unreasonable in saying, you're beautiful, make yourself less beautiful so that we can be beautiful too.
Oh, so it's like, it's Marxism.
I think it is. Looking back, it's not a good moral. It doesn't make any sense as a story.
Nature has given you advantages. Remove them from yourself and share them with the group.
Because at the end of the story, the rainbow fish has no more shiny scales, and everyone else has one shiny scale, or he has one left, and everybody's the same, and everyone's just as beautiful as everyone else. That's
very interesting. What's the lesson?
The moral, it's questionable.
Because if it was that the rainbow fish, the fish had been given something by somebody that it could share.
Exactly, it could share, like the little red hen making a cake. If you put some effort into helping her, then you get the rewards of.
Yes,
of
but
it.
If you're
that makes sense, but
just naturally have something that others like.
Yes.
I am tall, and I know short
yes.
people. Does that mean I should
give some of your height to others, so we're all the same height? It is very communist. It's concerningly, as you say,
it's not
Marxist.
even communist, is it? Because communism implies that you are receiving wealth from somewhere, not that it's inherently given to you. It's very strange.
Communism on day one.
Yes, communism on day one. How very odd.
It's bizarre. It was genuinely bizarre. But the important thing was, I was the rainbow fish, and therefore the most important person.
Well done, bravo. And that was the peak of your life.
That was it's the peak of my acting career.
On your wedding day, did you stand there at the altar thinking, it's quite good this, but
it'll never top the rainbow fish?
It's not rainbow fish, is it?
No. I'm not giving away this shiny scale. But yeah, sorry, I was only at that school for the 3 years, but I was very badly behaved.
Right.
So whereas you tried to attract the attention of the beautiful headmistress by making a dent in a piece of wood, I was just poorly behaved. I achieved, my artwork was the best. My painting of some daffodils, which proudly hung in my grandma's kitchen for many years, was superior to the others. Theirs was just green and yellow splodges. Mine was accurate. You could tell it was some beautiful daffodils.
Bravo.
But the problem was I was also quite quick at working. And so I'd do my work very well, finish very quickly, and then just mess about and just do whatever the hell I fancied. So just walk around the room, go and find something more interesting to do, and then do it, which of course drove my teachers completely nutty. And the same at break times, I would find more interesting things to do. So I worked out that if you broke a branch off the tree in the playground, you could use it to more efficiently dig holes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Which makes a lot of sense. And as a child, I want to make a little campfire area. I've collected some rocks to make a circle. I'm going to dig out the grass in the middle so it looks more like a campfire, and I'll arrange some sticks. Never thought about lighting it. I wasn't mad. But
what you mean is you didn't have a lighter.
That's exactly what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. 100% right. At this point, unfortunately, I had no friends who smoked. So,
Aged
6, I was unable to light fires in the playground.
A shame.
But that's the sort of thing. And this upset my teachers because digging a hole in the middle of the football field was considered...
it caused there to be a hole in the middle of the football field.
I mean, frankly, unsporting.
Yes. It is a way of winning, I suppose, by trapping your opponents in a trap.
It wasn't cricket, and neither was it football. And that was the problem.
Unfortunate.
So this sort of thing happened a lot, and my parents realised that this wasn't working, which is why they sent me to private school. So I was sent to private school to better myself and become less.
Where they still use the carpet beater as a form of education.
Well, I can't remember the difference, but I know that I was better behaved, and for one simple reason is I wanted to impress the teachers at this new school. And I had never had this interest at the last place. I wanted their admiration. I wanted them to say, well done, you've done incredibly well. Praise. I wanted their praise.
So your parents basically just sort of, they had you down cold. They knew that your ego was your driving force. And so they
Apparently
said,
so.
Let's put him on a stage where he'll have so much work to do to look good that he won't have time to be awkward.
And it bloody well worked, I have to tell you.
Here I am now.
My behaviour now is fantastic. I haven't played up and dug a hole in the garden for quite some time.
I think your landlord might beg to differ. Yeah.
So yes, discipline was quite different. I was badly behaved, did get told off a lot, spent a lot of time standing facing the wall in the corridor at primary school.
Absolutely not at all. I probably only remember 4 or 5 times that I was properly told off at school. I mean, there always are like little bits and bobs where you were behaving badly, but I remember once being sent into the corridor in secondary school, in year 9, I think, to venture towards the late noughties rather than the early noughties, and I remember the shock being so intense that I literally did the cartoon thing of looking behind me to see who the teacher was talking to. Because it wasn't me that got sent out into the class. And one of my friends had already been sent out for misbehaving. When I appeared, he assumed I'd been sent to go and get him, to bring him back. And when I told him I was there to join him, he was exultant. He thought it was hilarious.
Well, once I'd realised that praise was better than punishment, from there on in, it was fantastic, and I would strive to get badges.
A segue. Something else that I didn't have in my school.
Badge. You couldn't afford the metal.
We had pieces of cardboard and we wrote on it "Special Boy."
Special Boy. Spelt incorrectly. Boy with an I.
Special Boy.
That was another thing at school. Everything had to be spelt with an I or a Z. Those are the only 2 letters you're allowed to use.
Made deciphering essays very difficult.
Very confusing.
Anyway, so what were your badges? What badges did you have in your school?
I had a plethora of badges.
A plethora?
Because I realised the easiest way to get badges was to join committees and clubs. And nobody else wanted to join committees and clubs, but I quite liked the idea of joining committees and clubs. So I joined all the clubs that had badges. Not to get the badge, but I was happy that I got the badge once I joined. So I was a house captain. So I had a house captain badge that said house captain.
Yes.
Our houses had their own badges. So I had a house badge, which was just a round red circle. I was in the choir, so we got a badge that said choir. Now I remember that one was I've got these somewhere as well. They're in a pot.
Did you jingle gently as you walked down the corridor?
No, but I did get to the point where I had enough badges to arrange them on my jumper so they looked like a medal.
I think you may have told our readers, listeners, watchers about this previously.
Oh, I don't know if I have.
Well, tell us again for those that.
So there was a point where I got enough badges to arrange them like a medal.
Yes, you already said that.
And
Say it again. What did you do with them? How many badges did you have, and in what shape did you arrange them?
well, frankly, I had enough badges, and when you have enough badges, you can arrange them on your jumper. Clip them on
In the
using a
shape.
little clippy thing, and of a banana. And you have the top one, which was kind of a long one, and I think it said Eco Committee or something because we had an Eco Committee.
We had an Eco Committee. That's right.
And it basically involved looking after the school's allotment patch.
Right.
Which was great because I got to bring a spade and a fork into school.
Nice.
Without anybody questioning why am I bringing a spade and a fork into school.
Unlike normally when you did it anyway, but they did question.
Unlike normally, where people used to always ask questions, why have you got a fork with you? And I was like, I don't know. And they were like, why don't you join the Eco Committee?
Protection.
Then you'd have a reason. So I had a long one at the Eco Committee, and I had choir, and I had house captain and prefect and whatever it was, and then the house one at the bottom, the circle, which made it look like the dangly part of a medal. And I had these on my and they look great. I mean, I would be impressed if I saw these now. If I saw a student walk past me, I'd go, you know what, well done you. You've got
a lot of badges there.
You're living your best life right now.
No, my school was quite bad at that. I mean, we primary school actually had a really good house system, and we didn't have badges for it, but the houses were named after trees. So we had oak, ash, beech, and rowan.
Okay.
And
what were you?
I was oak, which I was very happy about. I remember when it came time, red. And in my mind, oak was obviously Gryffindor because,
Of course.
like
Everyone imagines they're in Gryffindor.
they do, but come on, oak tree, big, strong, brave tree. I think that's a fair link from oak trees to Gryffindor. Ash,
I think so.
was Slytherin. Ash were like
Blue.
Ash was it? No. Yes, it was blue. Ash was blue.
It has to be blue because it's always blue versus red. That's how it works. And then yellow and green were kind of
Yes,
strange
you're
people.
so right. They were yellow and green. How did you guess? Yes, beech was yellow and rowan was green. And nobody cared about beech and rowan. Boring. Oak and ash.
Exactly. We had the same. We had Emerson, which was red, which was us. We were the goodies.
Yeah.
We had Wycliffe, which was blue. And they definitely were the baddies. I mean, the parents literally looked like
Lucius
Malfoy's
Malfoy.
parents. They literally looked like... I'm not joking.
They picked
did.
their children up in a big black hearse. And
They weren't far off. And then there were the other two. What were the other two? I can't remember. Carol and...
Karen?
I can't remember the fourth one.
Marjorie?
Because it's unimportant. Marjorie. Damn it. What was it called? There was...
Useless house, loser house.
Have I said Stevenson? Yeah, Stevenson and Carol were the two kind of non-entities, yellow and green.
Are these named after just great British figures? Was it like Lewis Carroll, Robert Louis Stevenson?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who were the other two? Wycliffe, as in the Bible translator.
I assume so, and Emerson, who I can't remember what he did, but he was obviously a good egg.
Ralph Waldo, he's American. Yeah, but we did care. We did care about it. Like I do remember getting house points. It was a thing, and you did want your house to win, and it did encourage you to do good work. But when we got to secondary school, that wasn't so much of a thing, because as previously mentioned, my middle school was on two sites, and so it was more east and west were kind of the houses, and they were actually buildings that you inhabited. But they didn't really make
great divide.
Yeah, but they didn't give. There was no such thing as house points, so there wasn't any kind of. There was a very healthy rivalry, but there was no sort of formalized structure. They didn't direct our natural tribalism into cajoling us to do good work. Which, when you think about it, is all houses is. It's like divide and conquer, divide et impera, isn't it? It's like
yes, and being a house captain was fantastic for one reason: you got to go and collect the trophy on prize evening.
See, we didn't have a
stage.
trophy, unfortunately.
And whichever house won got the trophy, and the house captain got to go and collect it.
And do the glad handing, and you got invited to the
and
teacher's lounge for sherry afterwards.
And I think it was a shield. Oh, it was fantastic, because I'd always get the DT and the arch shield. And they always did one after the other, and I'd have to run round to go and get the other one. It was fantastic.
And the next award goes to Joey Hart, and the one after that, and the one after... Everyone hates him. Boo!
Boo, and I'm sat there smiling, surrounded by gold.
I will eat my dinner off one of my shields, for I have so many.
The next lunchtime I was there drinking out of the art cup, just having a great time.
Glittering with all your
Oh,
badges.
did you get the art cup? No, you did not. I got the art cup. Sip. What are you drinking? I'm drinking unset jelly. That's what I'm drinking.
Topical reference to the last episode. But yes, when we got to secondary school, so that was that. And then in the upper of my two secondary schools, there was no houses, but halfway through they sort of decided in a community cohesion project sort of thing that it might help us to care a bit more about our work if they introduced houses.
Yeah.
But rather than doing the obvious thing, which was giving us houses, allocating us to them, and then giving us house points for our house based on good work, it was sort of had to be one of these nobody loses, everyone wins, everyone's a winner, and taking part, prizes for taking part type things.
I have no interest in that.
No, so it didn't work because nobody, you couldn't win, so no one cared. And
no one cared, exactly.
But the funny thing was that some bright spark decided to name the houses after battleships. So the houses were called Invincible, Endeavour.
I think Invincible actually is an aircraft carrier, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, pardon me for not using the technical distinction.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Warships. Endeavour,
HMS,
Invincible.
Her Majesty's ships.
There was another one that was
Victory.
Victorious.
Victory. HMS Victory is a ship.
Victory, yes. And another one that's also famous that I can't remember that also began with E, I think.
Yeah, Invincible is an aircraft carrier. I'm right. HMS... You didn't have an Ark Royal or something, did you?
No, we didn't. But that meant that two of the houses were called Invincible and Victory, which was a bit daft, really, considering that they were supposed to be in competition with each other. And
Victory has lost this year.
Exactly.
Closely followed by Invincible, who was pipped at the post by occasionally wins.
By no one thought they could do it. HMS by Rubbish.
HMS Plucky.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and there was a sort of a head boy and head girl situation, but again, it wasn't like allocated by teachers. It had to be an election, which of course
we had interviews
about. Wow.
We had interviews with the deputy head where we had to put forward our case to be prefects, and so everyone applied to be a prefect. Well, not everyone, but the people who wanted to be a prefect applied to be a prefect, which in a school where your year group is 30 was about half the year group went forward for this, and a few people went forward to also be head boy or boys' school, so there was no head girl. I should have applied for it. I'd probably got it.
You'd have made papers with that, wouldn't you? They won't let me be the head girl. Discrimination.
Yes, exactly. So we had the head boy. Then there was a deputy head boy, and then the prefects were a general group. And I was a prefect. I didn't get any higher than that, which was upsetting. But
you didn't get the badges to jingle with.
I got the prefect badge. I didn't get the head boy badge.
What did
which
being
was
a prefect
fine because
entail?
Not very much. Out of school where there wasn't very many children. I think we got to stay inside at lunchtime.
Oh, that's worth interviewing
and
for.
We got to, exactly, and we basically spent the whole of lunchtimes telling everyone else not to come inside, whilst we stood on the heated radiators and they were out there in the cold.
That's such a, talking of Marxism or whatever, that's such a kind of pre-revolution Russia image, isn't it? You standing inside with the warmth and the coziness. So. Get out,
no,
peasants.
You may not enter. Stay outside, young child.
The warmth is out.
The snow is not cold this year. It's warm snow. Go enjoy.
Exactly. That's very strange.
So that was worth it. That was good. But yeah, we had to interview.
Which is as it should be. Like, it should be.
It was good practice because the idea was you were practicing interviewing for a job. You had to put forward your case as to why you were the best qualified.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a child. Can I stay inside? Yes, you can. That's exactly all we wanted you to say. Perfect. Well,
grovel. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, you're quite. I mean, I definitely understood that there was a need for programs and systems that gave those kids who were not otherwise encouraged and affirmed encouragements and affirmation. Absolutely see that. But equally, the fact that the entire system was premised on everyone wins, as far as that sort of thing went.
It's not setting anyone up for life either, is it?
Well, I don't
because
want
in the real world, not everyone when you go for a job interview, not everyone who interviews gets the job.
No.
You actually have to better yourself in order to present yourself better in order to get what you wanted. Yes. Which is a tough thing to teach children, but I think not teaching them is worse than teaching them it.
I sense the Daily Mail comment section rising up with this. These kids, they don't understand the real world. Back where I was, lad.
I think children should fight to the death in order to get a seat in a classroom.
Yes, exactly. Only the ones whose parents can provide them with the highest quality weapons will get education.
Exactly.
Just like in the real world.
Mother only got me a 2.2 rifle this year. I was beaten by a slightly older child with a 7.26 caliber semi-automatic machine gun. Damn cannibalism.
In the Hunger Games of education, I failed, sadly. But at least now I've had a few lessons from the school of hard knocks and real life, and I shall be well set up for the real world. I love that. Exactly. You always know someone's an absolute mentalist when their Facebook says, University of Life. What you mean is, I'm horrible. I'm an absolute douchebag, and I will explain to you why you're wrong on everything. Let's end this walk down the school memory lane, down the memory corridor.
Down the corridor of memories.
The corridor of mems.
Sampling the classrooms of thoughts gone by.
Thoughts gone by, and sausages in pockets, and other such scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
That we have passed through. And maybe a closing thought about school in the late noughties and early 90s. Late 90s and early noughties?
School. Overall, I enjoyed school. I look back, and there was times where people weren't very friendly and the rest of the children were horrible. But generally, I enjoyed learning, and I had a pretty good time.
Good. Well, I'm glad that that's the case. I really did not enjoy it and would quite happily never step foot in the doors of a school ever again. And that's good. Between us, we cover the full experience.
Yeah, we follow the full, on average.
Yes, we level out at a strong and well done, educators of Britain. We salute you. Well done. You do a good job. But children of Britain, you're horrible. We don't like you at all.